Hey, Ed, it's your friend, Richard Speck. I haven't written in a while, so I thought I'd drop you a line.
From Omaha, Nebraska, the capital city of the historic Haunted Heartland. My name is Brian Corey, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all, young and old, to this special episode of the world-famous Necronomicast. Episode 308 is here, my friends, and with it brings Tobias Jelinek, actor extraordinaire who began his journey into entertainment at age 15 when he was cast as Jay in Disney's cult classic Hocus Pocus. And over the past 30 years, he's built a reputation for portraying bold, unpredictable characters across film and television. You've seen him on Stranger Things, Mayfair Witches, Obliterated, Baskets, and now, oh my gosh, he's Richard Speck in Ryan Murphy's Monsters, which is on Netflix right now. A passionate actor, an incredible spokesman for all things creative, Tobias Jelinek is my guest on this episode of Necronomicast. And now calling in on the Necronomicast Newsmaker hotline, so excited to be welcoming to the program actor extraordinaire, Tobias Jelinek. Tobias, how are you? How's it in California?
It's a beautiful, almost 80 degrees. Yes, here we are. This is our late autumn, right?
It's perfect in Omaha right now. It's like 68 degrees, sunny. The trees are changing colors. You know, we get that a lot here. It's beautiful here at this time of year. We just celebrated Halloween last week. And so I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. We could talk a little bit about your days working on Hocus Pocus, and then a show that I don't share with my children, Monster.
You know, it's so, as you're describing the leaves turning.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Pennsylvania just a few weeks ago as the leaves were just beginning. You had a little bit of the yellow and the red popping, and it was interesting because initially I had gone for Hocus Pocus, and I had some of my castmates there who I love all of them. We have a lot of fun. We become, and closer friends through the cons. And it was shortly after Monster aired. So it was this really interesting moment where I'm so used to it just being Hocus Pocus, but all these people were coming in for Monster. So it was, somehow it ties in everything as you're talking, the autumn, getting to see some of the leaves back east and Hocus Pocus into Monster.
It's so cool to have you on the show and to talk to, like with my kids, I'm very, very nostalgic. I always go back. My birthday's in October. So Halloween, October, just a special time in my life always. And I love sharing that with my children. And what a great legacy that you guys leave, all of you that worked on Hocus Pocus, and how it's just managed to be just part of the pop culture, like tent poles of Halloween all these years later. It's amazing.
It's crazy. I guess it was a little over a week ago. I was up in Washington State. Elvira she has like a Washington horror con, and you have icons, like all of these horror icons, visiting. And, it really is something with at least four generations within families that'll come in and share how meaningful Hocus Pocus is. And most of us had no idea until we went to the cons, where you get to hear the personal stories, a lot of nostalgia. Also, just because we live in this world where we're inundated with pop culture, people really value, what it keeps alive. That's what I noticed with Hocus Pocus. It's like it connects me to childhood. I get to share some of these themes that aren't as prevalent today with my children. So that we've always loved it. What's interesting, and it's really come up since Monster, is at the cons, some fascinating conversations about how Hocus Pocus is this like softball lob into the world of horror.
Yeah.
It's a really, and I mean, of course, there are the themes, right? You have witches taking the lives of children. They're putting teenagers in cages. There are, men's body parts, right, that are, within their cauldron. So it's been very interesting because the fan base overlaps. And I didn't really have any idea until Monster and seeing how these, people who were coming in for Hocus Pocus, they're suddenly grabbing my Richard Speck, 8x10, and then we're, having a conversation. It's really interesting, right? But you have those horror roots with Hocus Pocus as well. David Kirshner, who produced it, big horror guy, Mick Garris,
right?
Horror,
right?
That's the beginning. That's where Hocus Pocus started before Disney, got a hold of it. And luckily they did, because it became something I think very special that, we wouldn't be sharing it with our children if it, if it was horror.
Well, yeah, that's what's great. And what's a great thing to, not many people can look back at their career and be like, hey, when I was 15, I did this, and it lives to this day. And people, love sharing it with their kids. And what a great thing, because, Disney with Hocus Pocus, and then the Haunted Mansion attraction, like that was like a gateway. I remember being a little kid going to the gateway, or going to the Haunted Mansion attraction at Disney, and like it was fun, but it had plenty of fright in there. Oh my goodness! And just like that kind of entry into the fun that you can have of being scared, of being startled and things like that, and being creeped out. But being able to share that, with my kids. My kids aren't really into podcasts, but I'm like, hey, I'm gonna have this guy. He's doing a lot of stuff, but he was in Hocus Pocus. They're like, what? Because usually it's like, I'm talking about ghost experts and parapsychologists and true crime people and things. And I'm like, yeah, he was. And my son is just cannot wait for the next episode or the next season of Stranger Things.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, he was in season 1. He's like, wait, what? Yeah. Well, who are you talking to? So I told him, so it's just cool to be able to have that connection, like you said, nostalgia, and bringing something that was important or cool in your childhood or younger, and bringing it to this next generation, and to have them embrace it,
Yeah. It's really interesting because Hocus Pocus only seems to get bigger. But even like with you mentioning Stranger Things, it's fascinating when you're involved in these projects that become a zeitgeist, right? There's this, and Monster, I have to say, the response around the world, this is the first, more than even with Stranger Things. And Hocus Pocus is like, it's right. Usually a film will start big, and then over the years, the fan base trickles. Hocus Pocus, it's the opposite. It only seems it's this slow grow, with Monster, it blew me away to be receiving messages from around the world, and it really was one of those kind of inspired moments of seeing what it is when we are all connected to stories. Like for a story, there's a sense of live, going live. And there were conversations I especially noticed on Instagram. And it meant so much to me, getting to have this dialogue and hearing people's reactions real time. And then even doing a video and it's updated and people comment on it. And, it's, this fascination, what it really brought to the forefront for me is our endless fascination with the macabre, right? And this is the thing with Hocus Pocus, right? I've talked about this a little bit, where the roots in the Salem witch trials, 1693, right? Where they came about because of a fictional book, that was describing the way witches dismember children, and the descriptions are what came up in the trial. So this beginning where we can't help but lean into what horrifies us about being human, and I grew up with the Grimm's fairy tales. My parents, they started, it was, they're called a Waldorf school, and a lot of those early years, you're being introduced to these story themes, rooted in that, it's very twisted if you go to the original Grimm's, right? We all know that now. Just the original horror films, the original horror stories that teach us a lot about the complexity and fullness of, what we love about being human and what terrifies us.
Yeah. And I even like, now that we're past Halloween and we're getting ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas, being a paranormal podcast, I'm endlessly fascinated about one of the most endearing, popular, and beloved Christmas stories that we just think about and experience every year is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, which is just this super scary ghost story of being warned about your impending death, and you better change your ways, and you're warned by the parent. You know what I mean? It's just like,
yes, yes. No, that's it. You're right. It's like the way it's right in front of us. And when you look at the stories we love, I mean, Hamlet, these you can just go to so many of the classics. And I'm glad that's the thing, like with the Christmas story, you know, it was one of the first plays I saw, by the way. And you're right. That's what fascinated me is this idea of the visitations and the haunting, and the way we play with time. You know, that's the thing with that story, especially is when we explore these themes, and that's with the Grimm's fairy tales as well, you know, where it's more this space of eternity than the specific time we're living in, you know? So we get this perspective. That's what I'm coming to love horror in new ways because of Monster and getting to talk to people, you know?
Oh man, I got to tell you, Monster, let's get into that for a little bit. Like not only just like the finished product, but like, I want to talk about like, you filmed it at Statesville Prison. The scenes, you know, that you're a part of. First of all, like walk me through this. Okay. I'm not an actor in Hollywood. Okay. So you're an actor and you got an agent and you're auditioning and you're interested in roles and people are interested in you and that whole process. And then like, did you know going into this, like when you first got that contact from whoever, like, hey, there's a part you might be interested in, Richard Speck. And you're like, did you say, oh, wow. Or did you say, who's that? Like what was?
It was a who's that.
Okay.
And then I read the scenes and they were very well written. And instead of going down the rabbit hole of who he actually was, because you also with Ryan Murphy, you can expect there will be elements of fantasy, right? Sure. There are aspects of, you know, you can trust, like you can really trust his storytelling, I find, but it's going to explore this dance between what's real and what can we talk about here? Well, how can we, you know, interject, you know, our imaginations and what's going on in our world today is what I often find with Ryan Murphy's shows. And so I leaned into Ian Brennan's writing, which, you know, and as an actor, a lot of times you'll read and you can think something's good and it ends up not being good. If you get into the intellect. So I use this acting technique. It's called the Michael Chekhov acting technique. And I only mention that because it begins more with like your body, you know, where you're going, instead of getting in too much into the head, it's like what images start emerging, you know, and with these scenes, it went deep real fast. You know, I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot coming up, you know, with those scenes. You know, and that's like, for me, yes, it's dark. What came up initially was almost like, you know, that the Hindi goddess Kali, the goddess of destruction.
Okay.
Real strong hit on that. A real strong hit, like the power and of destruction, but also taking away innocence. And, you know, these scenes were in prison with another man. And you have this idea of almost like taking on this transformative power, taking on some of that feminine power, a lot of pain, but the power in pain, and amassing more power and access. And there's even, you know, something that I really am fascinated by with evil is, yes, there's the ugly, there's also the beautiful. Right. We a lot of times with evil, what fascinates us is what lures us in.
Oh, the temptation.
Yeah. And beauty is an interesting word to use with it. We don't, you know, but in some of the books that fascinate me on, you know, with acting process and whatnot, you know, actors geek out on so much of this stuff, but there is like with evil, because we often are dealing with the forces of good and evil. It's when it comes to evil, there are so many faces, and it can be dismissed with the ugly, or it can be made two-dimensional with the ugly. But all that nuance of temptation into beauty, so with Spec, though, that's where it began. Began with the writing.
Okay.
And then, I did a deep dive. I did a deep dive into Spec.
Well, when I heard this was coming, I was pretty familiar with him because just my everything about true crime. And I remember back in the late 90s when Bill Curtis had the television special, and he put out as much as he could of the behind, like the not hidden camera. Somebody snuck in a video camera into the prison, and Richard Speck just kind of documented like a couple rendezvous and like just life in the prison and in all the corruption and everything there. Like, and it was just crazy fascinating. Like,
I mean, it's super fascinating. I want that video.
Yeah.
Because I actually would be curious your thoughts on this. The thing that fascinates me is, with Spec, his manhunt, for starters, was really the first highly televised manhunt for a serial killer. We remember, like, 3 years. So this was 1966 when he killed 8 student nurses in Chicago, and for a robbery, ended up, raping one. But it's very gruesome. I kind of leave that for people to look up if they want to go down that. Yeah. There was one nurse who managed to hide under the bed, and who ends up positively IDing him in trial. But his manhunt is absolutely chilling. 3 years before we had Kennedy's assassination. So this era, right, this loss of innocence for the nation, when what television is bringing into their living rooms as a shared experience. And then 3 years later, this gruesome, killing where he escapes, goes down to like Skid Row of Chicago. And meanwhile, they have the sketch because of, Cortisone, the woman who, survived and hid. And the story that, he goes, like a really seedy hotel where in certain descriptions, like there's feces in the hallways or in the bathrooms, and he tries to kill himself. When the manhunts, it's all over Chicago. It seems like they're getting closer. And I believe this, the story in one of the writings, it was like a janitor who found him. They call an ambulance, take this they don't know who he is. They take him to the hospital. And, one of the doctors takes some spittle and wipes off the mud off his forearm where he has the tattoo, Born to Raise Hell. And because this has been over the news, the doctor said, my God, this is the guy they're looking for.
Right.
This is Richard Speck.
Right.
And then of course, because, this is like shortly after the Miranda Act, like the way with justice and the press and media, this complicated new world, how media is influencing, these trials, they move him out of Chicago 3 hours south, and they have a gag order, so no press is allowed. And, it takes like 49 minutes, before they call the eyewitness. She comes, that famous where she gets up out of the stand, walks up to him and puts her finger inches away from his face and says, this is the man.
Yeah.
His story, it's really fast. I mean, I don't know where we want to go, because I found it so interesting. Like his childhood, all of it is, and most people did not know who he was. That's what I have discovered, is people reaching out. They wanted to know if he was real. Mm-hmm. I know why I went down all that. It was because his relationship to media, right? So that manhunt, the fact, just the serendipity of his murders being this first highly televised manhunt. And he goes silent. He despised the media. He doesn't talk to anybody until 10 years later. Once he's in prison in 1978, he speaks to, Chicago Tribune's Bob Greene, who's a celebrity at that point, he was like such a hot shot. He was interviewing all the rock stars. He was interviewing everybody. He had this poppy journalistic style that we now see in Esquire and Rolling Stone. And when you read his interview, it's as if he's interviewing a rock star. It's eerie.
Yeah, because Bob Greene was super famous for writing a book about, like Michael Jordan and everything too. Yeah. And like you said, like he covered it in a way that we didn't cover serial killers. Right.
No, and this is when Speck confesses. This one interview, they had one confession from the hospital, from the doctor, but because Speck was sedated, it wasn't brought into court.
Right.
But they didn't really need it because they had the eyewitness. So this was the first confession. And it's in the midst of Speck talking about his favorite movie stars and how he has women sending him love letters, and he thinks he'll be out of prison by 2000, and he wants to open a grocery store. It's like this really weird trip, and he confesses. And the reason I share this, like this little timeline for me that I found so fascinating, is then he goes quiet, doesn't have his photo taken, doesn't talk to any more media. He dies in 1988, the day before his 50th birthday, has a heart attack like his father had.
Yeah.
And then, so the video was in 88, 91 is when he dies, and it's not until 1996 when an anonymous lawyer sells this to Curtis.
Right. That's how Bill Curtis got it.
Yes. Now, and then he did make the A&E special, but before that, it was actually presented in court, where they were going to town in terms of the Illinois prison system's a fucking mess.
Right.
And look what's going on. And that video, which was, 2 hours, it's like, as you said, there's confession, him going into details of how hard it is to actually strangle someone. And it's not like television. They've got cocaine, they've got money. Is it a lover? And then the second half is a porno.
Right.
Now, the thing that is so interesting to me is this anonymous lawyer. It's almost like, did Speck hold on to this? I'm going to get the last word.
Yeah.
This final release, which, of course on A&E, they spin it into, well, look what he had to do to survive, but right. You can see he has a lot of access. Even these notes he's saying, if they only knew how much fun I was having, they would rather have me out because we've got it all. And that's a part of what we played with in Monster, right? The decadence, the access, and it's brought into fantasy elements.
It's brought into fantasy, but boy, is it based in reality. And
yep.
And you're even filming it at the prison, like before, was it right after it closed? Is it when you filmed it? What was it like? Like, first of all, I will never listen to "Gimme Shelter" by the Rolling Stones the same way again.
You can imagine when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, they gave me the Rolling Stones. Right. I texted Max, the director, was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I was like, oh boy. And then I knew your scenes were coming up because I knew it was coming. And here you are in this prison. You're putting on the stilettos with the fur on them, or the feathered stilettos. Yes. You've got the bra on. You got the Southern drawl.
Vaseline on the legs.
Vaseline.
Yes.
I'm like, oh boy,
yes.
Here we go. Here we go.
Well, and you can imagine, the thing about that prison for people who haven't seen it, and I hadn't, is this was the last panopticon prison in the United States, right? Where you have that central watchtower and almost this like Greek amphitheater, like a coliseum of cells circling it. So we were up on the top floor, and, they had set up this beautiful crane shot.
Yeah.
I actually, on Instagram, I posted this behind one of the camera ops. He gave me the video. I was like, I have to post this, which people love getting to see some of that behind the scenes, how it was put together. But you can imagine they had all the cells filled, with prisoners, not real prisoners at this
Right.
point. What if someone in press had mistook that, like, oh, it was prisoners? No, no, no. But it's all this the graded, metal flooring. So I'm in stilettos I haven't worn stilettos that often, trying to walk down the whole, the stairwell and everything. And it was a feat. It was more fun than my wife would perhaps like me to have had. Really epic beginning. Like that intro does it for me. It sets everything for, what Spec represents in this series.
Absolutely. There could be no other entrance for you other than that way. So whoever the director of photography, just everybody involved. I mean, like it was, like you said, that shot, when it's way back, I don't know how to describe it, but it's way back, and you see every every floor of the prison cell, and it's just this. It just fills the entire screen. It's just this wall of caged humanity. And here's this guy with hormone injected breasts and a silk robe, and and
the breasts were amazing. When we put, I could not believe. I mean, they were
impressive. They were impressive.
They were impressive. Yes, they really were. Everybody just had to. Yes, on the set too. I mean, it was funny. I felt protective of them because people wanted to look at them. I'm like, I must stay covered here.
Yes.
The thing with Stateville as well is, as you said, it had permanently closed only months before we started shooting, but there were still 8 inmates on dialysis.
Oh, what? Wow.
That were, yes. And it was very eerie. And I remember seeing one inmate playing basketball outdoors, and, we're walking past the execution chamber where John Wayne Gacy sat in the chair.
Yeah.
The ghosts are there. And, when you talk about paranormal, I'd be very curious what your read would be on this space. In terms of the atmosphere and how I think it comes through in the filming. I feel it's a part of, what we're witnessing. And that's Ryan Murphy. Mm-hmm. You see, bringing in our history with the element of fantasy and storytelling.
Yeah.
We shot there. Yeah.
So how did you pick up? Now I know you mentioned the Chekhov method, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that too. Cause that fascinates me. Cause I, as a musician, I know what goes into my psyche and my preparation and when I'm going out to perform, but
cool.
Yeah. But, how did you pick up on his voice from the video? How did you decide cause with the Chekhov method, actors are of course artists, and every choice that you make is super critical and crucial to the story, right? So how did you decide what to take from maybe the video that you saw him speak from, and then maybe like you said, there's a little bit of fantasy in there, but did you borrow something, or did you go someplace deep up in here? How do you prepare to be something like that?
Yeah.
And boy, you have to have some chops to perform those scenes, for sure.
Right. Yeah. This is fun stuff to talk about. And I think it's interesting for people to hear as well. Because whether you're an actor, a musician, I think it can also go an accountant, whatever. With the Chekhov technique, one thing that I fell in love with immediately is it begins with, what's called crossing a threshold. And you can make it very simple. It can be a step. It can be just a shift in your mind. But really this understanding that when I cross the threshold, I'm in artistic space. There's no judgment. Every movement becomes artistic. There's a concentration there, and really this welcoming of imagination, right? So to begin with that is very powerful, and I think that'd be great with music as well. So the other thing with the Chekhov technique is it's really this inspiration around our ability to transform. you know? And so it is a lot with imagination. You're really in this conversation with the subconscious, whatever, the superconscious, whatever you want to call it, whatever your experience of it is. But imagination. So with spec, you know, number one, what I did is I had a colleague, she was a mentor of mine, and I had never met her in person, and she was in Chicago, and she runs a Chekhov studio there. And we met in the historic Fine Arts building, this incredible space, which back in the day was, you know, housed with a lot of different artists, really cool spot. And, you know, they still have the elevator man. And so, you know, he pulls me in, I go up to the 9th floor, and it's down these corridors, all these little spaces, worlds. You can imagine every single door, there's a world. And I met her in this little back studio, and we just spent 2 hours entering the world of spec. And I chose to work with her because simply having someone else there and her familiarity with Chekhov, I mean, she is a Chekhov teacher. She's where I learned a lot of this from. You know, the safety of going into evil because it's in your imagination. Go, go, go as far as you can go into it, because at the end, you're going to cross that threshold again, back out into ordinary self, into me not really thinking about how I'm moving, right? All the stuff we do but out of habit. So just that crossing out, you know, I share that, you know, working with her name is Dawn Arnold. It's, you know, the Chicago Chekhov studio. And, you know, there's something for me so liberating when you allow, it's not that I have to, you know everything about his psychology. It's the imagination. And that's inspiring. So these were elements. So with, you know, imagine, and I think like images, however they come, it can be sound, it can be a rhythm, you know, like a tempo, these elements that you start to bring in. And so I like to, of course, do that, because who wouldn't? But then with Spec himself, because it's so dark and darkly fascinating, I would take in elements, and I instinctively felt when, okay, that's enough for today. And then bring that into artistic space, bring that into creative space, and see how imagination works with it. You know, that was really the key for me, you know, because I was in Chicago for a while, and I was in the hotel and reading the court files, and there were some weird elements where I was there on, it was like in April, and the day his trial started, I remember I was reading, I think it's like April 4th, and it's in the course, like on April 4th, he was, you know, there were like these similarities, there were these date analogies. And also when he left Chicago, he left Texas and returned to Illinois on March 9th, 1966. March 9th is my birthday. So it was very wild to start having these parallels and being in his city. And there was a self-guided tour, you know, of his manhunt. And so you can really start to enter the world, and you're feeling a different psychology and a different rhythm. You know, and that's where, you know, the Chekhov technique was such a healthy way of doing the work, but also letting it be creative work.
Wow.
And not, you know, separation. Yeah.
Does the Chekhov work, or like, does this work, or can you apply it to like perhaps live theater as well as, you know?
That's where it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. The roots are, that's where I love it, because the way they were working on acting process and technique was just miles and miles above what we can achieve today. You know, this was, you know, Michael Chekhov was the star actor in, if you're familiar, you know, with Stanislavski. So Konstantin Stanislavski, you know, the Russian Moscow theater, which gave birth to the method and everything we got, you know, it's when they came and did some performances and they're like, oh my God, what are these people doing? So Chekhov was different than Stanislavski. It wasn't as cerebral, but he was very involved with, you know, with Stanislavski, and you know, and he ended up doing his own thing. And so there are archives of his classes and books, and, you know, there's training you can do. I only discovered it 4 years ago, and have just loved it. It's how a lot of us intuitively work. He just developed a technique. It makes sense to most people once they start going to, like, oh yeah, well, I'd like to start with inspiration rather than, you know, beating myself up or analyzing, right? Because with analyzing, we're pulling things apart. It's like instead, and so the wisdom of the body, and that's what we experience with sports. Anytime we're loose, we're dancing. So anyhow, it involves some of that, and then of course goes into character and transformation, and you can play with archetypes. And that's when I mentioned Kali, right, the goddess of destruction. What's so beautiful about those images is it's polarities, opposition. It's not one thing, right? There's the seduction. There's what may even be some aspect of compassion, but also that, you know, evil, like just destruction. You know, Kali, it's like she has a necklace of skulls and a skirt made out of arms. It's been with us, right? Yeah. These we've had this for millennia.
It's so fascinating. Like when you think, you know, I'm not an actor, I'm a musician. Okay, so like when I think of acting, I try and like apply what I know about music into like acting. For example, like when you're filming Monster, you know, there's the camera people, there's the director of photography, like there's just like the crew. When you're on stage in front of hundreds of people, you know, doing Shakespeare or doing Rodgers and Hammerstein or doing something, you know, you've got hundreds of people there, maybe 1,000, you know what I mean? But I mean, like, and you're getting that instant feedback from an audience. They're laughing at you, with you, crying with you, crying because of what you're doing, that transference of emotion between the stage and the audience. And then when you're doing something perhaps just on a set and there's just a limited number of people there, you're not getting that feedback and that response, but yet you can still go to a place and deliver what you need to deliver to get the job done, you know? And it's like with music, I've had some great opportunities to play in front of lots of people. Like this last summer, I played national anthem for a Major League Baseball game on my trumpet.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, like, so tens of thousands of people there. But there are times though, like if I'm playing taps at a veteran's graveside and there's like 5, 6, 7 people there, like that.
Yeah.
But you still get that emotional transference of energy, or maybe that's a weird word to use with the graveside thing, but just the difference in music making, the difference in opportunities or the different aspects of acting, very fascinating to me. Like where you go mentally, how you exude that energy outward and how people receive it. Crazy.
Yes. You know, it's so funny because as you're saying that, you know, I'll just throw these out with the Chekhov technique, because a very, very important element is atmosphere. It's not just you isolated, you know, either on set or, as you're saying, like the atmosphere of a professional baseball game versus the atmosphere at a cemetery, right? With the outdoor, right? There's an atmosphere that informs us and that we inform. And so that's atmosphere in Chekhov, you actually spend quite a bit of time feeling the atmosphere. What's the atmosphere of the story? That's what with this, it's not just speck in a cell. There's a bit cut out of the monologue at the end where Speck describes, Ed Gein being not too far off. Right? I mean, I mentioned it, like he's in a spa, like, I'm visualizing him in the psych ward as a spa, like as if he's tricked the system. But, this atmosphere of Geen being in this almost like elevated tower somewhere outside of the cell, and more like I'm in a dungeon, but connected to him, right? That atmosphere affects how you're going to perform. And you talked about, energy, sending energy out, and also how it's received. Really big in the Chekhov. It's called radiating, which I love.
Wow.
It's the idea of radiating. And then it's also so that is radiated in the atmosphere to the audience, and then they receive, and then they also, as you were saying, they give back. It's really what's so wonderful about live. The other thing you made me think about during the filming of Monster, the first day we shot a little bit out of sequence. And the first day, I don't know if you remember, there's a letter that Speck writes to Ed Gein, and he reads it.
Right.
And I appear, right, in his room. There's this fantasy element of I'm reading it. So that was the first scene we shot. In the script, it says voiceover. So I double checked, is this voiceover? Am I not? Because it was long. It was a good sized letter. And they're like, yes, it's off camera. It's VO. I get there. And, oh no, this is on camera. And I'm in it. And I don't have this monologue. So I tell Max Winker, I'm like, this had said VO. I asked, and he's like, okay, well, don't worry about it. Like, we'll just have you read it. You can just read it. And this is the great thing about filmmaking. This is why I share it compared to theater.
Okay. Where
they had to set up a shot. They also were going to do, Charlie Hunnam, played Geen, him in bed, and they were going to establish him sitting at the desk. So I had like 45 minutes, and there was a back room. This was another beautiful historic, hotel. And I was in the wardrobe. I've got it all on, and I had the time. So I said, let me start working it. And over 45 minutes, not only had I memorized it, but I really kind of fine-tuned the voice. Oh, wow. This is the first day. There's all this extra energy and attention. So we went straight from that, being able to really work it and rehearse it, into the filming. And those kind of accidents are such a part of the creative work. You just stay open, right? Well, let's see what this is going to become. Either I'm going to have to go in there and read it off the page, or, oh no, we've got it. Okay. So that's a part of what we'll have, that stuff's interesting, right? With filmmaking, no, it's not a live audience. And yet there is, as you said, there is the audience of everyone on the crew. And Monster was a very special, talented crew. I really allowed myself, more than many other jobs, to use them as audience. Like, we shot that last kind of like Bob Fosse style dance number where Ed Gein is, he's moving through, and all the serial killers come out. You've got these beautiful dancers, everyone from the hospital.
Right.
And
what big fans we are of yours, Ed.
Oh my God, I know. Right? It's so, yeah. And that's what's so interesting. I feel, that's like with Ian Brennan, who wrote it. And then of course, Ryan Murphy, it's this comment on how we, and they of course explore it with Hitchcock, and right. The birth of Psycho, but like, we can't turn away from it. Like, our fascination, and of course, putting our version on their story, taking these stories and spinning it into what we want it to become.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was very special. That felt live, right? That, and that's wonderful in a TV show when it's bringing in those aspects, that power of catching stuff in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Very musical.
I love, yeah. And that's why, like, and tying it back into all my paranormal listeners right now, like, that's why I think, and that's why you hear all these stories about haunted theaters, haunted opera houses, haunted this and that, like where there is so much human emotion, like that jail that you're in. Oh my gosh. Well, think about the isolation, the despair, the anger, just everything that's going on there. But just like even on stage, like that, the communication, like paranormal experiences, I believe, are personal communicative experiences between whatever and us. And, just having that emotion on stage, also the emotion in the audience, just giving it back to you, the laughter, the tears, going on both sides. Yeah, it's super fascinating, and I love talking to artists about things like that, because it's usually like you talk to some people or they think it's like, well, you're at home and you're practicing your trumpet, you're learning the tune, and then you go out and play it, and it's like, well, there's the communication. Not only I mentioned like between what's on the stage and the audience, but also the people that are on the stage, whether in a band or in a cast, or the cast and the crew on a film shoot. Like you are bouncing off of each other. Your emotion, your energy, feeding other people and reaction. And oh my gosh, I could go on and on. I know we don't have much time.
Well, no, see, that's it. That's the zone. So like with Chekhov as well, a lot of it really begins with this experience of ensemble.
Yeah.
And so what can happen for a lot of actors, if a lot of trainings, unfortunately, shove them right into the like your character. Immediately you get a script and like, what's my character?
Yeah.
But if you explore the atmosphere of the story, right, where you can go in and out of different characters in the story, or go into, when you're talking about the paranormal, see, it could be very interesting for you to cross the threshold. You of course you show up to the place for paranormal activity, but to then have that moment of, I'm now crossing that threshold into receptivity, into conversation.
Yeah.
And the thing that also is an interesting parallel with acting is when you explore atmosphere, which is we should all explore. It's like to just take it outside of, our body. We're in space. So to explore atmosphere with the Chekhov technique, you're moving. It's almost like you're expressing what you're sensing in the atmosphere. You're pulling images. And I love that because it immediately becomes so much bigger than you. And that's valuable information, which a lot of times we just don't give ourselves.
Yeah.
We keep it within our head.
Yeah. That's a unique insight. I really like that. Well, when I'm preparing and getting ready to talk to somebody, I'm like, well, we're going to be talking about this Netflix show and about his acting career and whatnot. But I love how we can just start talking about just like these issues that are part of the acting or musical or the creative process, but are just so not talked about enough. And it's just so fascinating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think you're right. I'm with the paranormal, I think I haven't done a lot of talking about, like in those terms, like calling it paranormal. But, for me, this is atmosphere. This is what inspires me about going into places where you feel something is happening there. Yeah. You feel the difference in a grocery store or a castle from the Middle Ages, right? You have very different sensation, and that affects our emotion and what we think. And so it's very cool that it's interesting how you cross this gamut on your podcast and what you
I'm just always looking for different communication avenues with people, and seeing like I said earlier, like these musical and acting, they're personal like experiences, and I think the paranormal are personal experiences with people. And the more that we talk about these things and we explore these things and have these great conversations like we're having, like I said, I was really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you, and it did not disappoint. Big fan of yours. I love the insight that you gave me and my listeners about the craft and the artistry in acting and what goes into preparing a role and delivering that role, no matter if it's 15-year-old Jay or if it's 50-year-old Richard Speck. I love it. And and for you to share this this time with me and let me able to, pick your brain about things. I'm just so thankful. It's just been a wonderful opportunity to talk to you today.
Well, I'm grateful too. You're awesome. And it goes with me. I'm grateful that we got to spend this time. It's new. We got to have, this is the point of podcasts. Yeah. Ideally, you have a conversation where there are questions raised and it gives you something to think about and hopefully keep talking about.
Yeah. Well, I know people can catch you not only on this #1 Netflix show, Monster, but they can also catch you on Wizards Beyond, Waverly Place, ABC's High Potential. I mean, you're maintaining a very busy schedule, and it's because you're talented, and I can tell you're a hard worker and you're very thoughtful in your craft. And I haven't been to a con in a couple years, but I love going to the Crypticon horror movie convention that's always in Kansas City. So maybe our paths will cross in some con sometime, and we'll get a selfie.
Yes. You got to let me know. Yeah, that would be Kansas City. I didn't realize what a vibrant community it is there. It is booming.
Yeah, Kansas City is great. And it's and it's only 3 hours and 15 minutes away from here. So when they have a good con, I love going down there and checking it out. So, but anyway, I've taken so much of your time and I'm very appreciative. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I will be following the rest of your career and with just a lot of admiration and thankfulness that we had this opportunity to connect.
Awesome. Let's do it again. Very fun.
All right, my friend.
Okay. Adios.
There we go, everybody. Episode 308 of Necronomicast with Tobias Jelinek. That was so much fun to have a conversation with an actor who really gets into his craft. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you've seen Ryan Murphy's Monster, the story of Ed Gein on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Oh my gosh. He's insane in it. And I remember watching that Richard Speck video years ago and thinking oh my God, how insane, just the insanity of it all. Tobias nailed it. Doing all kinds of things in Hollywood too. Super interesting. This Chekhov-based acting lab. All right, my friends, that was episode 308. Coming up next, a cursed collection of haunted dolls with author Fiona Dodwell. All kinds of stories about dolls, haunted dolls, movie dolls. It's funny, Don Mancini's interviewed in it. Don Mancini's been on this program. Of course, from Child's Play, Chucky. So yeah, Fiona is going to be the next guest, episode 309. And it looks like after that, Mr. Jason Offutt is going to return to the program. Chasing North American Monsters is the name of his book. I think that's how the order of episodes is going to go. Sometimes you just got to, you get this opportunity to talk to somebody and they're like, hey, can you talk Tuesday? And their project isn't coming out in weeks, or you've promised somebody else you've got an episode, to put their episode out. So you make it work somehow. Make everybody happy, including the listener. So I just had an interview this week with Tobias Wayland again and Richard Estep talking about their new book, Mothman. Sightings and investigations of the iconic flying cryptid. And between that book, Fiona's book, and some other books I'm reading, I am up to my ears in reading material. Rachel James is going to be on the show talking about whack job, axe murders, the history of axe murders in the United States. I'm really looking forward to that one, preparing like a madman, like an axe-wielding madman for that interview. My friend Andrew Vogt and his talented band playing the song Possibly Olives will carry us off. Thank you, Andrew. And with that, my friends, thank you for your listenership and your support. Stay safe on the roads. Have a good night. And go get some sleep. And no, I'm not buying the Conjuring house. It's not me. I'm sorry. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I had it.